Gathered friends, welcome to Bionicle Fandom Reviews, the show where I build, review, and showcase every single one of the fan-created, canonized Bionicle models over the entirety of Bionicle Generation 1's 10-year run. In 2005, the LEGO Group officially hosted Dark Hunter and Rahi canon contests, showcasing fan mocks in official media like books. Even moving onwards all the way up to 2010, fan websites like BZ Power continued to host canon contests, enriching the world of Bionicle with new depictions, artwork, and builds. And even now, there's been a renaissance of canon contests. Thanks to TTV and sponsored by Greg Farshdi, the original scribe of Bionicle, we have modern canonization contests depicting characters that we never thought would see the light of day and are still ongoing right now. Now, throughout the show, it is my own goal to own, build, review, and showcase every single fan-created canonized model created for Bionicle, and share these reviews with all of you. And while we mostly stick to canon models, there are a few rare exceptions which shine through. Fan mocks depicting their versions of Bionicle characters, canon or otherwise, that are so exemplary that they deserve a review of their own. For every Bionicle fandom review, I rank the builds by 4 key points. Number 1 is posability. Can the model get in good poses? Can it support its own weight? And can it hold the weight of its own weapons, or is it just falling over? Number 2 is building techniques. Is the model just regurgitating stuff from existing LEGO sets, or is it trying something new and doing that well as using unique parts usages? Number 3 is overall aesthetics. How good does the model look completely agnostic of storyline relevance, and is it generally aesthetically appealing? And finally, number 4 is believability in universe, which means that does the storyline given to the model by the Bionicle story team make sense given how the model is built, and does the model scale well next to some representative samples from the Bionicle universe? And with that, let's consider these 4 points and more as we jump into a brief story and lore explanation of today's featured build. Alright, so for today's featured Bionicle fandom review, we have a much anticipated Toa Hagah Kualus. So the Toa Hagah in general were the elite guardians of Makuta Pterodax and served as the protectors of the Brotherhood of Makuta until they realized that the Brotherhood of Makuta were up to no good. So they stole the Kanohi Avoki, the Mask of Light, from them, unfortunately were mutated into Rahaga in the process by Rudaka's Rotuka Spinner, but eventually lived on as heroes and eventually reverted back to their prime Toa Hagah forms. Kualus in particular wears the Kanohi of Rahi control, allowing him to control multiple Rahi at once, which is a very unique power for him, and something that fits his personality well as essentially an animal lover. Kualus also carries a Sub-Zero spear, much like the other spears of the Toa Hagah, and a Rotuka launching shield, and that's basically all you need to know about him. And with that, we can jump right into the review of the much anticipated Toa Hagah Kualus. Alright, so here we have the final canonized version of Toa Hagah Kualus in all his glory. So this is using the metal blue color scheme in conjunction with the white to create a color scheme for a Toa Vice that we actually haven't seen before in Bionicle to date. What's really cool about Toa Kualus is that the metal blue color scheme is actually something that was initially conceptualized for the build model, but we weren't really sure if he was actually going to have this as the final color scheme, especially because there was a lot of contention in the art polls in terms of whether or not he'd be silver or metal blue or whatnot, but I personally am very happy the metal blue color scheme worked out because it just seems to work really well. Just a quick note before I get started, the Hagah shield, which is 3D printed here, actually all of the metal blue pieces here, besides the shoulder pads and the sword, are 3D printed. The shield has been designed by the 3D part modeler King Sidorak. You can go check out a link in the description below to find out all about him and see a link to stuff that he's selling as well as giving away for free online in terms of 3D models. The mask here is based off of a Bionicle mask in the comics, the Mask of Sensory Aptitude, although that isn't actually Kualus' mask. In the storyline, the Toa Hagah have their masks modeled after famous long-lost heroes and great heroes of the past, so you can really just make their masks whatever you want. This one in particular, again, is modeled after a mask that appeared hand-drawn in one of the comics and has been modeled by the 3D modeler King K. You can check him out on Thingiverse as well. And all the other 3D printed pieces, like the Nuva chestplate, the Metru armor here, as well as the Metru feet, were just kind of 3D pieces that I actually modified myself. I downloaded the DAT file for these pieces off of Eldra, converted them manually to STLs, did some quick STL repairs to actually be able to make the pieces print okay, and then I printed them out, and here here we go. You can see the finalized pieces. I literally just also searched metal blue filament on Amazon and picked the closest possible match. I did not use spray paint whatsoever. I know a lot of people are going to try to spray paint these, but personally, I just am not really good at spray painting, so I just wanted to 3D print it because I just have a little bit more experience doing that. But without further ado, let's just dive right into the model. And you may be thinking, what exactly sets this model apart from pretty much any other Metru build? Well, let's just start off with a quick turnaround for starters. Immediately you can see that he is using a cloth piece as a scarf here, which is a really good use of the element. This is actually an official Lego piece. A lot of people did have questions about it, but this is officially a Lego piece. It appeared in the Rey buildable figure, which was released in 2015 for the Star Wars buildable figure line. So this is actually the outfit that she wears all around the entire figure, just wrapped around the mask itself. I do want to give a shout out to the actual creator of this model who was able to help me figure out how to put the scarf on, so thank you so much. You can check them out in the description below as well. And other than that, you can see that this is actually a pretty unique build because for starters, it does have a posability gear in the back. You can actually angle the arms. Let's kind of do that here. But there actually is quite a lot of friction, which is really interesting. And you may be wondering, how exactly was this friction achieved? Because you do have the actual posability here, but you also have a good amount of friction. And I was honestly really impressed by what I found. So taking apart the chest here, let's just kind of take a little peek inside here. I'm going to just remove the 3D printed chest armor temporarily. And then also remove this piece here. I'm going to try not to mess with the cape because that was actually kind of difficult to get on. So let me just see how I can remove this right here so you can see. So essentially right here, you may notice that this is just using a ball joint in the middle here. This is just a standard ball joint piece, and that's causing enough friction by just adding these different Technic washer pieces in between. So you've got the Technic bushings here, and the gear here, and just this provides enough friction to allow the arm to stay in place if you want to, while retaining the gear function, which is really clever. I personally have never seen that technique used before, so really cool to see that. And honestly, I kind of want to do that for all of the other Toa Metru builds that I have to actually give them friction in the arms because it is a really good technique and one that I'm honestly surprised kind of works. Now there is a bit of a minor illegal connection here. The Nuva torso is really just held in by friction with the actual pin used right here with a stud on it. This pin right here, as well as just the friction in between it, causes the Nuva torso to stay on. It does help that it's 3D printed, so the axle isn't perfect, but even if you're just using a standard Nuva torso, it does actually stay on very well, so that's very nice to see. But of course, I do want to focus a little bit on posability. This one, the posability is basically just standard. It's nothing really you wouldn't expect. You can move the arm up and down with friction here, angle the shield. This is really just attached the exact same way all of the other Toa Hagah attach their shields here. Obviously, the legs are just simple Metru limbs, so he's just using the standard amount of articulation that just a regular Toa Metru would have. Despite him having a scarf, you can actually get quite a lot of articulation out of the head, which is really nice to see. Really nice to actually have the scarf blowing in the wind here. I know the scarf is definitely a controversial choice, but I do really like it. And of course, we just went over exactly how the action feature works here. You can still move the arm, still have a lot of friction, but actually allow it to keep its poses. It definitely isn't the most legal of techniques. I feel like I'm probably straining the pieces when I'm doing that, but it works just fine. And honestly, you're probably just damaging some very, very common gears and Technic bushings, so it's not really that big of a deal. Thankfully, because this is just a standard Metru build, you have a ton of posability here. And honestly, that's really because the design of the Toa Metru was already that good. I really like just how dynamic the poses can be. You can really get this posed up all sorts of different directions and whatnot, just have them all kind of lined up as a Toa team. And it's really, really stable because again, this is just a standard Metru build. And it's the closest you can get to actually having an official Lego set. So taking a step back for a little bit, we talked a little bit about building techniques, and to be honest, there isn't really anything too much else to say here. I really love the clever use of the ball joint in the middle of the torso just to give it a little bit more friction, but honestly, everything else is pretty standard. The cloth here for the scarf is a nice addition as well, and I do like the parts usages, like I like the Knight's Kingdom blade here being used as a spear tip, as well as the armor pieces, but all in all, this is really just your run-of-the-mill Toa Metru build.
build. And it's not really like they had a choice in the matter, because one of the design stipulations for the Toa Hagah was that they actually had to be Metru builds. So this designer did the best they could with what they were given. I think that this is a good supplement or addition to the Metru build itself. It uses the Throwbot foot piece right here as kind of a place to make the armor slope down. That is a building technique I really like because it doesn't make the armor piece just kind of stand out. I also like the way that the Nuva torso is attached. I would not have figured that would be a good attachment point, but it actually works out very well. And of course the scarf, despite actually just being a cloth element, really does stay on very well. You don't really have to mess with it. It just stays on the face and works very well as a scarf. So I'm very happy with that. And just another note is that there actually are Lego studs. If we zoom into the eyes here, it's a little hard to see because I'm using the dark green studs. The creator did say to use the brighter green studs, but that was already after I put the scarf in. I only saw that afterwards, so I just figured the dark green would be fine. It's a little hard to see again, but as you can see, the eyes in here are actually green Lego studs, which is really cool to see. Those actually fit in with the mask. Obviously, this is thanks to the 3D part modeler King K as well, who actually made it compatible with Lego studs for the goggles here, but I think that works out really well. And all in all here, you can see this is Kualus. And with that, we can probably move on to overall aesthetics. Now, I know that this one definitely is pretty contentious among the Bionicle community because not everybody likes the use of the scarf. Personally, I think it looks really cool, but a lot of people feel like it doesn't necessarily fit with a biomechanical warrior, which I can see the point, but honestly, I just think it looks cool, and maybe you can just kind of ignore the function because the form itself looks really interesting, so I'm pretty happy with the way the scarf is done. I also am very, very, very happy that the metal blue color scheme was something that was retained for the final winner. I think that does a lot to make this color scheme pop. I actually built this fully in silver because all the pieces do exist in silver save for the sword, so I built pretty much everything else in silver, and honestly, it just wasn't that interesting of a color scheme because we've seen a lot of silver before with Bionicle, particularly with stuff like 2008, and this is a refreshing change of pace, and it really does make sense because each of the Toa Hagah's armor colors are supposed to be metallic, so why not have each of them have a different metallic armor color, which is something that actually happened in the final design. But with that, we can probably now take a step back and take a look at how Kualus ranks among some of the other representative samples in the Bionicle universe. To do so, I have brought alongside Hagah Kualus. You can see him right here. So this is essentially his Hagah form. So there he is, as well as the two official canon Toa Hagah sets, which were the official Hagah sets we got. First of all, we have the leader of the team, Toa Norik. So let's kind of just put him alongside here. And then we have the Toa of Air, Toa Iruni here. So let's kind of get him here as well. Like so. And you can see that immediately it looks like Kualus is all part of this same team, which is a feature I think is really cool. One thing I really do like is just how consistent this is. And I actually do think it was an excellent idea to make the contest entrants actually have to stick to the Metru build. While again, this is maybe a bit of a controversial point, I think using the Metru build for Kualus here really does make him feel like he fits in with the rest of the Toa Hagah. And it really does feel like all of these members could be part of a cohesive team. This is probably one of the best scores any model is going to get in terms of believability in universe because it is the closest you could get to an actual Lego set. Of course, with the Hagah form, this is the much smaller version of him, so all of the Hagah kind of look the same. It's not like I'm necessarily looking for general visual consistency between them because, let's face it, the Hagah all look the same and essentially are just little shrunken Rakshi builds, but one thing that I really do want to emphasize is just how well this and frankly all the other Toa Hagah look alongside the official Toa Hagah sets. One thing I do have to mention is that I have modified the official sets to give them more posability. You'll notice that I've just used the age-old trick of mounting them on ball joints here. They cannot actually do that in the official sets. They were just using the standard fixed articulation with the gear function. So that's just something in case people notice and wonder why they actually have ball joints here, that's why. But other than that, you can see just how good Kualus looks alongside other members of his team. And with that, we can probably sum this up with some analysis of all the points. So first of all, I do want to start off by saying, with posability, this is pretty much to be expected. Although the one thing I was really impressed by was the fact that they were able to incorporate the gear function while adding in a lot of friction as well. That alone deserves a 10 out of 10 in posability in my regard, because you can get this into really cool poses, but he also has a gear function. That alone elevates the posability score in my mind, because you can not only get this into good poses, but he also has a gear function. And that alone elevates it above many of the other Toa Hagah that we're going to be reviewing. That being said, it is unfortunate that the arms are not mounted on ball joints. It is a very easy technique to be able to mount them on ball joints, as you can see, like I've done with Iruni and Norik here, and I think that they could have easily preserved both the gear function and articulation and posability while still just mounting the arms on ball sockets, kind of like what I've done here. So I do wish that he was actually able to move his arms around just a little bit more. I honestly probably will be modifying this after I actually review all of the rest of the Toa Hagah to incorporate that articulation, but otherwise, this definitely stands out apart from the rest because you actually have the full-on gear function while retaining friction, using a technique I have not seen before. And for that, this is getting an 8 out of 10 in terms of posability. And then we can move on to building techniques, and this is pretty much kind of in line with posability as well. The building technique I was most impressed by was the one used to actually add some friction to the Metru joints here to actually allow him to move around his arm with the gear function while still being able to be posed, so very impressive there. I also like just the standard parts usages of different pieces here and there. Generally, the use of the pieces like the Knight's Kingdom armor work very well for this character. I'm also very happy with the Ray piece used as the scarf. I think that works out very well. And all in all, I think there's just good parts usages used all throughout this model. And so I'm going to give the building techniques a 7 out of 10. It's nothing we haven't seen before. It's a standard Metru build. The legs are basically just Metru legs. The torso is doing a few unique things. You've got some nice detailing in the chest to actually add the friction, and I do like some parts usages. But at the end of the day, and this is not the builder's fault, it is basically just staying as close to official sets as possible, which again is not a bad thing. It's just something I have to point out, and there definitely are much more interesting and complex builds that I've seen for the other Bionicle canon reviews. And with that, we can now move on to aesthetics. So aesthetically speaking, I think this is wicked cool. I love the color scheme, I love the parts usages. I almost have no complaints. And again, this is a subjective opinion. This is just what I think, but I love the way this scarf looks on this character. And so I'm going to give general aesthetics a 9 out of 10. Really, the only thing that could have been improved in my mind is just adding a little bit more ball joint posability on the arms here, which I think would have improved aesthetics a lot and allowed you to get it into even more interesting poses. But besides that, everything is really cool, and I love the metal blue color scheme so much. And finally, we can wrap this up with believability in universe, and yes, this is getting a 10 out of 10. I mean, just look at how good he looks next to the other official Toa Hagah sets. There's really nothing else I can say about it. Again, because it's using the Metru build, it feels like this could have been an official Bionicle set. He looks fantastic alongside his teammates, and overall, this is one of the most interesting builds to come out of the TTV canonization contest because it just works so well alongside the sets. Even if it's not the most intricate of builds, even if it's just kind of showing stuff that maybe some of you have seen before, I think that it really accomplishes its job as being part of the Toa Hagah team, and that's what truly sets this model apart from the rest. But with that, we have summed up this review. Thank you so much for tuning into Duck Bricks. I hope you enjoyed our first look at the Toa Hagah. Stay tuned for the near future where I'll be reviewing every single canonized Toa Hagah systematically. I probably will spice it up and not just have 5 weeks in a row of the 4 Toa Hagah as well as all of them together. I'll throw in a few extra reviews here and there of some other random stuff just so it doesn't get boring, but definitely do stay tuned because the rest of the Toa Hagah reviews are coming very soon. And stay tuned because after we review all of the Toa Hagah, I will be doing a comparison shot of all of them and taking a closer look at how they function as a full-on Toa team. And so with that, thank you all so much for tuning in. Stay tuned every Monday unless otherwise stated for a brand new Bionicle Fanon review, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.